We are going over life's organizational hierarchy from chapter 1. We're going to start with something very small, a carbon atom. And it is being depicted here with this letter C inside this circle. Now, atoms are made of protons, electrons, and neutrons, which are subatomic particles. Atoms can be bound together to form larger things that we call molecules. An example of a large complex molecule is the DNA molecule, which you must have heard of as the information molecule of life. It is being depicted here as these two strands, and it forms a double helix. Molecules together can form larger, more complex structures that we call organelles. An example of a very famous organelle is the chloroplast, which is being depicted here as this green entity. It is green because it has the pigment molecule that can capture sunlight and with carbon dioxide and water can make glucose, or otherwise known as sugar for plants, but it also generates the oxygen that we find inside the atmosphere. Where are chloroplasts found? Chloroplasts are found inside cells. So cells are even larger entities, and they are composed of several organelles. An example here includes the organelle that has the DNA called the nucleus. That would be where the DNA of this plant resides. But down here you also see the chloroplast, which is the organelle that will make sugar, a process known as photosynthesis. If we group several cells together, cells that have the same function, grouped together, that is known as a tissue. And so if we have several photosynthetic cells all together, we would call that a tissue. And tissues get together to make larger things that we call organs. An example of an organ is simply a leaf. But leaves are not the only organs that we find, and so we can build something even larger, and we call that an organism. So an example of an organism is a tree, which is composed of leaves, but also branches and trunks and roots. Several trees together form a population. So you can have a population of several trees in the same location. But along with trees, you would also find other living things. So for example, you would find caterpillars, you would find squirrels, you would find bacteria, you would find birds, you would find humans. We call that a community when you have several different organisms living in the same area. But living things have to interact with non-living things as well, such as water, or such as air, or soil. And so we call that level of organization the ecosystem. And a great example of an ecosystem is the Louisiana wetland. But the Louisiana wetland is, of course, not the only ecosystem that we find on this planet Earth. The planet Earth, with all of its different ecosystems, is known as the biosphere.